We're together again. Gathered together again, carefree cooks all over the world at the best time of the year for cooking. What could be better? It's Tuesday Talk Live, everyone. And it's noon on Tuesday. If it's not where you are, then we're not live. And you need to go to webcookingclasses.com/live and register for my alert system, because we are the carefree cooks. We gather at this time every week. And you know you're a carefree cook when you create your own recipes. And you know what that does? Of course, it brings friends and family towards you. And you learn every time you cook. You define your own cooking style, you practice the pro methods that we teach in web cooking classes, and you love your cooking, and you're a carefree cook. If you've missed any of these past Tuesday Talk Lives, you can go to my Pinterest or Instagram pages, and they're all being cataloged for you there. So welcome, everybody. It is a great time of year. I get so excited about holiday baking, about people coming to your house, that you get to show off your cooking skills. You get to do all the things that you've been practicing all year long. And one of the best parts of this is holiday baking and holiday cookies. But I gotta ask you, why? Why is it that that's the way the cookie crumbles, right? This is an American, I think, idiom. It's a phrase that means, well, I mean, that's life, basically. Well, that's how the cookie crumbles. Hey, did you get that job, Joe? No, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, you know. Hey, did your cookies come out okay? No, they were a little dry. That's the way the cookie crumbles. I guess that one's a little too specific, right? So we're going to go to Cookie University today together, because I have a lot of information to give you so you can have the best holiday cookies this year. We've got cookie parties, cookie events, cookie exchange parties, and this is the time of year that I get a holy geez amount of questions about cookies. Are they just mini cakes? Where did cookies come from? How many kinds of cookies are there? What's the difference between the different kinds of cookies? Why are the cookies haunting my dreams? Why won't they just leave me alone? Why do I think of cookies all the time? Well, maybe the last three were just me. They call me, they talk to me. I'm always thinking of different types of cookies, the way I can change one cookie into another, how I can get one of the characteristics that I want, and that's what I wanted to share with you today. This is Cookie University, ladies and gentlemen, that we're going to be talking about. So make sure you bookmark this page. Make sure you share this with everyone else, because you're going to get about 3 weeks worth of cookie college in about 15 minutes. Because cookies, the definition really is that they're small, flat pastries that are usually eaten alone. Well, I don't mean by yourself. That's sad. I don't mean you sit in the corner eat. I mean they're not accompanied by anything. And let me make a disclaimer here right away. In the U.S., they're cookies. In the UK, in Australia, and a lot of other places, they're biscuits. So you can tell I don't have a British accent. I'm going to say cookies. You can say biscuits in your head as we talk. But look, these things have existed as long as baking has. As long as you can put some kind of dough in fire. The Dutch used it, and they had a word that was called koekhay. The J is silent, and that's where our American cookie comes from. And biscuits and cookies, they're everywhere, all over the world, all throughout history, because they dry so well and they travel so well. So, you know, things that are moist, things that have moisture can go bad. They can get moldy. They can attract bacteria. Of course, proteins go bad. So way back when, if you were traveling and you could make a baked bannock or Anzac cake that was just oats that were dried out and held together, that traveled really well for you. And, you know, while cookies are little cakes, they're really not cakes from a technical standpoint, because the cookies have no moisture. What would your cake be? Think about a layer cake that was hard and crumbly, you know? That's not a cake, it's a cookie. So here's our first distinction. Cakes, high moisture. Cookies, low moisture. From there, they're pretty much the same, because moisture gives that light, airy texture in cakes that you really love, and that's what's missing in dry, crumbly cookies. So stick with me for just a few more minutes, because at graduation, which is going to take place 5 minutes from now at your Cookie University graduation, I'm going to tell you how to get the characteristics that you want in your cookies, how to change your formulas just a little bit so you can get them a little chewier or crispier or whatever you might want. But really, the main challenge in making cookies is incorporating air into a dry product. This is the hardest thing to do. In your cakes, it's really, really easy to do because the moisture, the eggs, they trap things. In something that is so dry, the only way to get air into it is in mixing. And most cookies are mixed using the creaming method. And you know this. This is the method that you used with Grandma. This is the method everybody uses. You measure all your ingredients by weight. Very important, the difference between weight and volume. If you want to make the same cakes and cookies again and again consistently, by weight. Now look, again, there's a big difference between cooking, right, and baking. I say burn your recipes when it comes to cooking. Do whatever you want. It's the Wild West. But when you're baking, these formulas really are precise and need to be followed. The second step is you're going to cream together the fat and the sugar. Any recipe that says cream together the Crisco and the sugar, or the butter and the sugar, or combine brown sugar and white sugar and cream it together, that's a creaming method that you can follow. So this very first step, and I showed you this a few weeks ago when I made my Scottish shortbread cookies live here on Facebook, that the first step, the creaming of the fat and sugar, is your first opportunity to incorporate as much air as possible. But a lot of people, they ignore that immediately. The next thing is you add eggs in small increments. Another big mistake people make in cookie baking is they just dump, if it says 3 eggs or 3 egg yolks, they dump them all in. But the problem with this is the eggs are there to create an emulsification. The emulsification between the fat and any liquid in the egg white, is made by the egg yolk. And emulsifications, if you've ever made a Caesar dressing or hollandaise sauce, they have to start very slowly. Don't dump eggs into your mixture. Add them very slowly to get that emulsification. And you know what this does? If you do it slowly and you do it right, it incorporates even more air. Next, combine the sifted dry ingredients. Most home cooks, they're like, sift? What do I gotta bother doing that for? And look, you don't need a sifter. You don't need the thing. You could do it with a strainer, a colander. Heck, you could take the screens off your house, wash them first, and then you could run the flour through that. But you know what sifting your ingredients does? Yeah, it incorporates more air. Don't skip this step. So don't undercream, don't dump the eggs in all at once, and don't not sift the ingredients, because those are all 3 opportunities to incorporate air. Then you want to mix gently to combine the ingredients. Way too many people are making cookies with their mixer on high, and the more you agitate flour with some moisture in the egg, you develop gluten, and over mixing will give you very chewy cookies. If you want chewy cookies, then knock yourself out. But for me, a tender cookie is really the best way to go. Then at the very end, you stir with your hand, even if you're on your KitchenAid or mixer. Get rid of that thing, because now is the time to stir in extracts, nuts, chips, dried fruit, any of those things very gently, because we don't want to knock out the air. We're adding very heavy products like nuts and things like that. And the extract. Most extracts are acidic. So if you add the extract in with your eggs, you have the potential to coagulate the egg protein. You get little bits of scrambled eggs. Any extracts should not be put in with eggs. They should be put in at the very end. So these are 5, at least 5 common mistakes people make when using the creaming method to make their cookies. But there's so much more that goes into this. And now you are a sophomore already. 3 minutes later, you're a sophomore in Cookie University. So let's move on to the advanced classes, which has to do with makeup methods for cookies. Look, once you make your dough, The shape, the size, how you portion them is entirely up to you. So the easiest thing for me that I like to do is drop cookies. And that's with a portion scoop. You scoop a consistent amount of each cookie and you drop it onto a pan to either be frozen or baked off immediately. Easy to do. Icebox cookies are when you take the entire dough and you shape it into a log and wrap it with either plastic wrap or I prefer parchment paper. Then later on you can cut a slice and bake off a cookie one at a time. These cookies could be bar cookies. Bar cookies are usually pressed or layered into shallow pans. Everybody's made these where you mix graham cracker crumbs with butter and then you pat that into the bottom of the pan, then the condensed milk goes on top. Well, you could do this with sugar cookies as well. It could be a base for any kind of bar cookie that you wanted. Rolled cookies are very often what you see at the holidays this year. That's when you roll out your dough to a consistent thickness and you use your cookie cutters to cut them into little shapes. Great for kids to do. Pressed cookies, either with a cookie press, like you probably saw mom or grandma do years ago, or a pastry bag. You can make little shapes, S's, teach your kids how to use a pastry bag, and they can write their names in sugar cookie dough and butter cookie dough, and then bake it off. Wafer cookies are usually a poured batter, and then they're shaped when they're very hot. These are like the cigarette cookies, the rolled, filled pirouette cookies. That's how you make those, with a poured batter on a sheet, and then you roll them over a stick or a dowel. You can make taco cookies this way, with a very high ratio of egg whites that are more pliable and don't coagulate and stiffen. You can make wafer cookies poured onto a sheet and then just hang them over like a dowel, and you get a little taco shape there, and you can fill that with ganache or something like that. Always store cookies in an airtight container. Why? Did you miss your freshman year? Where were you? You're a junior now. In Cookie University, freshman year, 5 minutes ago, I told you because they're dry. They're very dry. Anything that's so dry like that is going to absorb moisture. And if you don't put them in an airtight container or airtight wrapping, they will absorb everything around them, including onions, including garlic, including cigarettes. Whatever is going on in your house is going to be absorbed by the cookie. So airtight containers. And lastly, desired cookie characteristics. This is senior year now, so we're right about to graduate. Don't cut class just because you're a senior and the weather is nice, because this is the way to take one type of dough and give it the characteristics of something else that you would want. So if you're looking for crispiness in your cookies, if your cookies are soft and pliable, maybe a little chewy, and you like them crisper, you need a lower proportion of moisture and a stiffer dough. This might mean removing egg whites from your cookie and just using yolks. This might be you're using the whole egg, but a higher proportion of flour or a lower proportion of fat. We want a stiffer, drier, crumbly dough that's going to give you a crisper cookie. You need a high sugar and fat content for a workable dough. So the sugar is going to caramelize, don't forget. That's what's going to give you your brownness. The fat content is what gives you your spread and tenderness. So if you lower a little bit of that fat and increase the sugar, you'll have some crispiness because of the caramelization as well. And of course, longer baking times will help evaporate any moisture that's in that oven as well. But longer baking times could ruin a cookie that was supposed to be baked for a shorter amount of time. So along with that comes lowering the oven temperature just a little bit for a longer period of time. If your cookies are already too crispy and you want them softer, well, there's a way to do that. We need a higher proportion of moisture. We need a thinner dough. So this is where you could add a few drops of cream or milk or something. Even your extracts add moisture to your dough. You want a lower sugar content. You want a lower fat content, because a lower sugar content, and it should be a higher fat content because fat is tenderizers. The difference in yeast breads, the difference between a French dough and an Italian loaf is an Italian loaf has some kind of fat, usually olive oil. French dough is chewier, tougher. Italian is generally softer, and that's because of the fat. You want to add some hygroscopic elements, things that retain any moisture that's in there. If you want a soft cookie, give it some honey, give it some molasses, give it some. When I used to bake in an assisted living home, and we had diabetic patients there, I used to use pureed apples or apple juice as a tenderizer for softness in the cookies instead of the sugar as well. If you want chewiness, if you like a nice chewy cookie, and some of them are higher sugar, add a little bit of liquid and lower that fat content, because again, fat is a tenderizer in baking. Add a higher proportion of eggs. The coagulation of proteins in the egg is going to give I hate to say meatiness to it, but yes, the difference between a lean French baguette and a brioche or a challah bread that has a lot of egg in it is a dramatic difference in softness and chewiness. So you could add some more eggs in there. Get a stronger flour if you want chewiness to it. Purposely develop that gluten. Longer mixing times, and use a bread flour maybe for your cookies, and you'll find that you get the chewiness that you're looking for. And this is a common mistake with a lot of people, and you can see the photo in the background, which is spread. Cookies that spread too much. Cookies where the chocolate chips are higher than the cookie dough itself. Now, some people like this. To me, I think it's an error. I want my chocolate chips hidden within the cookie dough. I want to be surprised when I bite into the cookie dough that I found a chocolate chip. But some people like these, and actually there's a famous company here in Baltimore. They're German bakers, the Otterbein, I think they're called, cookies, and they're like wafer thin with bumpy chocolate chips on them. But if you like spread, high sugar, high fat increases spread. Think about a cookie that would be like 90% sugar and butter and only a little bit of flour. Yeah, that's going to spread out dramatically. Think about just throwing a stick of butter in the oven. The butter will melt and spread. More fat in your cookie gives you more spread, gives you more tenderness as well, like we talked about. So you have to try and balance these things. A higher leavening agent content increases spread as well. If you put more baking soda, more baking powder into your cookie formula, it will blow its lid off, is what happens really. Instead of gradually reducing that CO2, you get an oven spring. You get an explosion of carbon dioxide, and then the cookie settles down. Similar to when the middle of your cake falls, if you have a cake that falls in the middle, that's why that happens. So we're purposely doing that to the cookie if we want to increase the spread. And lower oven temperatures, longer cooking times will give you a paler, more spread cookie if you like that. To me, I think that's a fail. I like nice high cookies. Oh, and grease the heck out of the pan too. Make it like an ice rink. You know, if you grease the pan, don't use parchment paper, don't use your silicone pads, but if you butter the pan or spray it with something, it'll be like an ice rink for the cookie, and it'll spread out that much more. Because, I mean, don't you find it just unbelievably amazing? I know I do. It blows my mind that all of baking comes down to just 6 ingredients. The whole world of baking is found in 6 ingredients. If you have a fat, a flour, some eggs, a liquid, and some flavorings, you can make anything in the world. But how can that possibly be? Why are the same 6 ingredients responsible for cakes and scones and biscotti and cookies and pat a choux paste and everything else? Because ultimately it's how you mix them that matters most. As long as you have a leavener to make them puff, it's the mixing method. And this is what I tell people over and over and over again at the holiday season. This time of year, the biggest mistakes in your baking are not made in the oven. People are so concerned with how long, at what temperature, when I'm here to tell you that the biggest mistakes in holiday baking are made in the mixing, are made in the mixer bowl. When you're not incorporating enough air, when you're not creating that emulsification with the eggs, when you're putting in heavy chocolate chips and nuts early in the mixing, when you're adding an acid, heaven forbid, like the extracts early in the process, flat go your cookies because you're not incorporating air in a dry ingredient. How did I do? 15 minutes? Cookie University. You're all graduates now. The quickest college on the internet makes you a Cookie Meister in just 15 minutes. Look, it's really not that difficult, but cookie mixing, is done with your children this time of year. This is a great opportunity to bring your kids into the kitchen and create those traditions that you remember. You don't ever forget time with grandma in the kitchen, but be mindful of the process. Teach these kids that there's a skill to it, that there's something that is actually better than fair. There is something that is outstanding, and the way to achieve that, and you instill something even greater in your kids. And I think it's really, really amazing. So who's with us today? Who has graduated? Let me get my other screen up here. Who has graduated Cookie University with us? There we are. Hey, Kevin Willis is with us. That's great. Hey, Margaret, good to see you. Bob is with us as well. Where do I see the rest of the comments? I only see 4 of them there. Here we go. That's good. Hi, Rebecca, representing all vegans all over the world. She's here. Alan's with us, and Jason. Jason says cookies in Colorado. Jason, I know you're aware of high altitude baking because the higher pressure means that water evaporates at a different temperature, and leaveners act differently. So generally you're going to decrease moisture, increase leaveners, but we'll deal with that another day for Rocky Mountain High. Hi, Kimberly is with us. Everybody's gonna make cookies. That's cool. I'm inspiring it. Everybody make cookies. I see your hearts. Thank you very much. I love it. If you like what we talked about today, thumbs up and hearts means that more people are gonna see it, and that's what I really like. Bob is asking, what distinguishes a strong flour versus a weak flour? Very good question, Bob. A stronger flour has a higher protein content because protein in the flour, through moisture and agitation, creates gluten. Gluten creates the chewiness, the bite of a bagel, of a pizza crust. So a stronger flour is intimating that it's going to be chewier at the end because it has more protein in it. So a stronger flour is like bread flour, patent flour, the 000 flour that they use for pizza doughs. A weaker flour is a flour that has a higher starch content but a lower protein content. So you won't develop as much gluten in mixing. This is cake flours, pastry flours, things like that, because if you want to make a really delicate pastry, a really soft pastry, and it needs to be mixed 3 minutes at least, that could create a chewy pastry with a bread flour, or it could create a really tender pastry using a cake or a pastry flour. So it's a really good question, Bob. And actually, here's another suggestion I can make for you. Of all those desired characteristics in cookies that we just talked about, if you want to make a softer cookie, you could use a weaker flour. Use a pastry flour instead of like all-purpose. So I would say for what's available for the home cook, it would be bread flour, strongest, all-purpose flour, cake flour, pastry flour, from strongest to weakest, to make your cookies softer or chewier, your breads, things like that. Hey, Carolyn's with us from Alabama. Ann is with us as well. Good morning, good afternoon. That's good. Hey, everyone, looking for questions. Very good reminders from a longtime cookie maker. Hey, look, if you've never done a cookie exchange at the holidays, it's a really cool thing to do to get your neighbors together. Invite 10 people to your house, and each of those people is agreeing to make 10 dozen cookies. Or, okay. I could feel the heart palpitations in everyone already. A half dozen cookies, all right? So 10 people, they each make 60 cookies wrapped up in 10 packages. You all swap cookies, and you leave with your entire neighborhood's cookies, 6 or 12 at a time. It's just a cool holiday thing to do. So if you haven't done that, you should. Rachel, no wonder my creamed cookie dough separates. Yeah, because you poured acid on top of it. You wouldn't put like vinegar or wine in there. Extracts have to go at the end, after the emulsification takes place. You'll get better, certainly better cookies that way. Our Canadian friends are with us. Hi, from Toronto, from Ontario. That's good. All our Carefree cooks are so excited about cookie doughs now. So if you increase the egg whites, it decreases the moisture. Carrie's asking me, if you decrease egg whites, it decreases the moisture. Yes, there is more moisture in an egg white than there is an egg yolk. So if you take the whites out and just leave the yolks, or let's say your cookie dough calls for calls for 2 whole eggs, take one of the whites out. Use 1 whole egg and 1 yolk. Will make a drier cookie. Hi, Donna from Scarsdale. Any gluten-free tips, Beth? Is a whole nother realm of cooking. Yeah, gluten-free flours. There are so many great commercially available gluten-free flours available to commercials. Look. So yes, but there are substitutions that need to be made for gluten-free diets. But one of my best suggestions in any of the specialty diets or desires that you have is don't try and emulate something that like you can't eat. Like one of the best examples, it was those Snackwell cookies many years ago, and they had like 10 calories each or something. And they tried to emulate what a real chocolate chip cookie would be. They were horrible to begin with, but you'd eat an entire box because you never got your chocolate craving satisfied from the fake chocolate thing. So what I would say is use almond flour. Make like Linzer cookies. Find cookies and things that are naturally made out of almond flour or walnut flours or things like that, because they go perfectly at the holiday. Don't try and make your basic chocolate chip cookie with some kind of rice flour, and it's not going to be the same. Make a cookie that calls for almond flour in the first place, and it's a great way to make gluten-free cookies. Susan's going to make cookies together. Kevin's going to bake with his 4-year-old granddaughter. I love hearing stuff like that. Super. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So what I'm going to get, a quinoa flour is gluten-free as well. You could try that. So I'm going to get to questions that are actually posted on here afterward. But let's see what's going on within the Carefree Cooks community this week. This was one of my favorites from the week. When you talk about cookie dough, this is Michael. Michael did embossed cookies. So a few days earlier, Michael was telling us how he bought this rolling pin, and the rolling pin had these embossed images on them. He made some butter cookie dough, and he rolled it out, stamping these images on them. Aren't they beautiful? I mean, they're exquisite, but here's something so funny. When you know the methods of baking, because I immediately said, is there an egg in this dough? And Michael was like, yeah, chef, how'd you know? Like, people were asking me, how'd you know? Because think about this. We talked about spread just a minute ago. If you stamp something, it can't spread. All the images would distort. So just like we talked about all those elements in cookies, I knew there had to be an egg in this to keep those images the way that they were, because otherwise they would distort and spread. There we go. Who else? Let's see. Rosie. Rosie's doing snickerdoodle cookies. That's her favorite at the holidays. Look at these things. Good photography, too. Doesn't that? Look at the crispiness and the crunchiness and that. Doesn't that make you just want to bite that cookie? English muffins. How cool. Look, it's not all about cookies at the holidays. This is a traditional heritage product for Marcy. So Marcy's making English muffins. And look, I don't want you guys out there to think these are our Carefree Cooks. This is not an example of all the professional chefs I know. Okay, I don't want you to think that I brought in ringers. Right? These are people that knew nothing about this, a short period of time, but because of confidence in methods and then a curiosity, they're making their own English muffins. It's unbelievable. So congratulations to you, Marcy. Bill, he had cookie day at his house last Saturday. They made a whole bunch of dough on Thursday, let it rest in the refrigerator, and he is doing, he's giving most of them as gifts, he said. These are thumbprint cookies with mint and raspberry jam. That was really cool. Chocolate chip cookies, cup cookies that he puts Rolo candies or Reese's Pieces cups. That's chocolatey. I love that. Then he's doing sugar cookies, oatmeal raisin, some sugar cookies, and he said today we're going to make potato chip cookies. Hey, I want to know what those are, Bill. Tell us, please, Bill, if you're with us, Tell us in the comments, what's a potato chip cookie? Because he's going to be making them today, I guess. I would love to know that. Make sure you post that as well, Bill. That's great. Here's the end result. Each of his cookies, nicely done. So he went cookie crazy as well. Gail is making biscuits. Okay, once again, biscuits in the U.S., these are biscuits. There we go. These are the breakfast items that we have that's basically fat and flour that you bake off. In the U.S., we call these biscuits. Cookies are all the other things that I've shown you. So I know it gets very confusing. It's like we have a different word for everything over here. Jason's making his own pita bread. Again, Jason is not a professional chef. Jason is not a professional baker. Jason is a guy that likes to figure things out, and he does, and he makes his own pita bread. Also because he lives way out on a farm somewhere, and it's like 100 miles to go buy bread. A lot easier to make it at that point. Michael's making pot pies. Not all the baking at the holidays has to be something sweet. Not all of it has to be a cookie. You can do savory things as well. It's a beautiful pot pie he's making with his crust. Also, all the things going on in our Carefree Cooks community from Tuesday Talk Live. And you know, I always have so much fun being with you on Tuesdays. And don't forget, there's only a few left. If you haven't been to my Holiday Cooking Success class, it's free to everyone. These are the last classes I'm going to hold before the holiday. Now, hundreds of people have taken this class this year, and they're finding it much easier to save time, save money, explode their confidence, and really control that holiday kitchen, because I have a 5-step plan in this free class. So there's only a few of them left. If you haven't been to the Holiday Cooking Success class, go to webcookingclasses.com/turkey, and you can get a free entry into that class. And you know, if you liked what we were talking about today, if you know someone who wants to become a cookie graduate in 15 minutes or less, like this video, please share it with them so we can all have a great holiday cookie time this year. It's Chef Todd Moore thanking you so much for being with me again, and reminding you that there's a method to your holiday baking success. Well, we'll see you soon. Bye, guys.